Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Hart, and I'm a fifth year IGP student. In my fourth year, I went abroad to Japan, and I have recently returned from there. I'm going to talk about my fieldwork experience over there. So, first, I'm going to go with the interviews I had with the companies Fuserashi and Everon. I went in there with Dr. Matsumoto. He is one of the staff and the professors at Osaka University of Commerce, and he would be there to help introduce me to the organization and help translate from Japanese to English and vice versa if it was necessary. Which leads to one of the surprising things I had about going to the interview was that I could maybe understand about 90% of the conversation. And I thought this was very good because I could directly talk to the staff there during the interview. Even though I went to interview with both Fusarashi and Everon, I could only do one of them, and I would have to make a choice between them. Both these companies were manufacturing companies. They would make parts for automobiles, things such as nuts, bolts, bearings, any part that would be necessary in that. So these are very technical companies. I believe the type of work I would get into would be very um, factory oriented, technical. Um, which leads to another thing. When I'm studying Japanese, I'm very familiar with the simple language, the day to day life stuff. And I thought one of the most exciting things about learning Japanese and this type of thing is that we would learn very technical Japanese, things like Nekkan Tanzo, right here, which is hot forging, and Hyomin Arasa Sokuteiki, which is a word for surface roughness measurement machine, which you can imagine are very technical terms and something I'm not very familiar with. So if I'm going to work in these industries, I would have to become familiar with these type of things. And I thought that would be very exciting to get into. I was doing a lot of research when I would go into these company websites. During the interview, they would ask you things about yourself. They wanted to know my hobbies. They wanted to know my parents. What companies did my parents work for? Their type of occupation. So I thought that was very interesting. But unfortunately, I couldn't continue to do these. I couldn't do the internship with these companies because of COVID-19. This was in March. I would go to do the interview. Well, it was only the next week when I was told that we had to go back to the United States. But anyway, we did come up with an alternative project I could do my fieldwork, Japanese related, when I would be looking into the automotive industry. And more specifically, this would be the Keiretsu practices in Japan. So allow me to give you some background on this. Prior to the events of World War II, Japanese conglomerates known as Zaibatsu were operating in a wide variety of industries, controlling a large amount of divisions, and this would allow them great power in the Japanese economy. After the war, these companies were reorganized to limit their power. Today, they continue some of these same practices in a form called Keiretsu. And you can see some examples of Keiretsu companies right now. These would be Zaibatsu, formerly Zaibatsu, the Sumitomo Group, Mitsui Group, and the Mitsubishi Group. Maybe the Mitsubishi Group is the one you're most familiar with. But anyway, I mean, Sumitomo deals with steel, construction, electronics, insurance, a wide variety of things that you might not think are related. And this is especially true for companies like the Mitsui Group, which I'll go into detail later. So an example of some of these practices, or I guess this is more of a summary of the actual practices, they would cross share holdings, they would hold shares in each other's companies, they would exchange information and personnel between each other, and they would coordinate activities, they would plan things together. They would like to do preference, they would prefer to do business with associated companies. They don't like outsiders being a part. They like this history um, between each other, and this is what they focus on. And some keiretsu companies organize around the central bank. We will see that they are called horizontal keiretsu, and I'll show you an example of that right now. The Mitsui Group is one of these horizontal keiretsu. They operate in several major industries to provide a variety of products and services, and they usually revolve around the central bank to finance these different ventures. They are one of the world's largest conglomerates with 506 affiliated companies for consolidation. They closely associate with Sumitomo Mitsui Financial Group, and some of their companies include the Mitsui OSK Lines, the maritime shipping company, and this is the bank, the Sumitomo Mitsui Financial Group, which is one of the three large banks in Japan. Now you can see some of the fields that they go into, the business units on the right here. They have iron and steel, energy, infrastructure. Down here we got food business, retail, healthcare, and services. Some of these are not very related at all, so I thought it was very interesting to look into companies like this. One of the examples that Mitsui can do with this kind of power, I'll show you the information and personal exchange practice that Keiretsu companies are known for. They wanted to develop a third terminal at a shipping port in Indonesia, and they would draw on expertise from their different units, such as the infrastructure projects business unit and the transportation logistics business unit. This would be different units of their group, and I guess they would all work together. They would collaborate and help make this project a lot easier. Mitsui has also acquired stakes in the project in the region prior to this project, and this would include buying Singapore-based Portec International, which operates terminals and ports equipment. And this would also make it a lot easier for Mitsui to. They would play a large part into doing this project. Normally, you would have people contract with each other. They would have unrelated companies negotiate some sort of things together. But this is Mitsui is doing most of the work, and they can because they have this keiretsu relationship between within the group. An example of, we talked about horizontal keiretsu. This is a vertical keiretsu, which is the Toyota Group, which a vertical keiretsu is a large company with hundreds of suppliers, usually organized in a hierarchy. Here, Toyota is at the top of this hierarchy. They don't normally revolve around the central bank, but they maintain cross shareholdings in supplier companies to influence their management. So they hold shares of each other. And yeah, they would have a lot of power on each other's management. They managed to be globally competitive through a business philosophy known as Kaizen, which is continuous improvement. And we will see that this is an excellent model for supply chain management. A lot of companies look at Toyota's system and think, this is the way to go. This is the right thing. To more in detail, they follow something called the Toyota Way. So all the problems that they deal with, they would view it from the perspective of this Toyota Way. And the two things that they focus on is the Kaizen and the respect for people. I think Kaizen is very fascinating because you would have the employees, you would encourage them to find problems in the organization, and it could be anything small or anything really, and they would encourage them to offer solutions, to solve them, to make things just a little bit better. The whole idea is to improve quality little by little each and every single time, and they really value this. Another part is that they have respect for people. They respect others, make every effort to understand each other, take responsibility, and do our best to build mutual trust. And they also focus on teamwork. Now, the whole point with this Toyota Way is that if they don't follow this, this is where the problems are coming. So if they have a problem, this is the reason why they have it is because they've lost the way. So a summary of the practices, or I guess these are the advantages and disadvantages. The advantages will be dynamic opportunities for employees. So, I mean, you can imagine if you're working in a wide variety of industries, if you're very good at iron and steel, and I guess you understand the business process of that, there is some part of that that could work in the food industry or healthcare. And what these keiretsu companies like to do is they take those employees who are experts and they try to apply it to a completely different industry. And it usually works, and it gives these opportunities for these employees. They also have diversification of risk between industries, and this is only natural because you have such a wide variety of things. You have a large portfolio. So if something goes bad, the other one will usually make up for it. There's a strong group ethic between these companies, and this is very important because it's Japan. Japan is very collective valuing country. They are very, I guess you could say, they're group oriented, and This type of thing wouldn't necessarily work in the United States. I think they value the individual a lot more, but Japanese people really like to work together. So I think it would work better in Japan and other Eastern countries. The practices align with traditional Eastern values. A disadvantage you could see with the Keiretsu companies is that even though they're valuing each other, they focus more on the history of the companies and they support each other. Some of these companies may not perform very well. So, bailing out of poor performing companies by the bank may hurt the group overall. So if they don't perform very well, then of course it's not going to work as well. So the whole point of Keiretsu is to improve each other's performances. This can make it incredibly difficult for foreign competition. I mean, if you have these companies working together, it doesn't have to be public. It could be very difficult for foreign competitors to enter. And low competition may lead to poor practices. And I guess you could see this with Toyota. I mean, Toyota is so powerful in Japan that if they all of a sudden decided that they weren't focusing as much on quality as they should, they could last for a good deal because of the power they have in the company relationships. They could lead to these poor practices because they don't really need to maintain the quality as they say they do. So I thought this was a very fascinating overview of Keiretsu, and I think this will be very important to consider in the future. Thank you.